My son reorganized a family project and removed my name from the presentation. He forgot to check the metadata. When the investor clicked View Original Author, the entire room shifted its attention, straight to me. I should have seen it coming. Trevor had been circling the company like a vulture for months, dropping hints about new leadership and generational transition in every meeting. But sitting in that chrome and glass boardroom on the 14th floor of the Meridian Tower, watching my own son pitch my work as his own, I felt something cold settle in my chest. The presentation looked professional. Trevor had always been good with surfaces, polished slides, confident gestures, that practiced smile he'd learned from watching TED Talks. He stood at the head of the table in his tailored navy suit, clicking through the logistics optimization model I'd spent 6 months developing. The model that would save our clients millions in supply chain costs. The model that represented everything I'd learned in 25 years of building this company from nothing. As you can see, Trevor said, gesturing to a complex flowchart, this integrated approach revolutionizes how we think about infrastructure consulting. I sat 3 chairs down, invisible. The investor, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Vance from Cornerstone Capital, nodded along, impressed. Her assistant, a nervous kid who couldn't have been older than 23, tapped notes on his tablet. Elise watched from the video conference screen mounted on the wall. My wife's face was carefully neutral, but I could read the tension in her jaw. She'd warned me this morning over coffee that Trevor was planning something. I'd told her she was being paranoid. I was wrong. Trevor advanced to the next slide, the implementation timeline. We've structured this rollout in 3 phases, each building on the last. The beauty of this system is its scalability. We. He kept saying we, as if he'd done anything more than change the font on slides I'd drafted. Patricia leaned forward. This is impressive work. The cost projections alone justify the investment. She reached for her laptop. Trevor, let me pull up the file you sent. I want to review the methodology section before we discuss terms. I watched Trevor's face. Just for a second, something flickered there. Uncertainty, maybe fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that smooth confidence. Of course, he said. Take your time. Patricia clicked through folders. I knew exactly what would happen next because I'd designed the damn template myself. Every document from our company included embedded metadata, author information, revision history, the whole digital paper trail. It was a habit from my early days when tracking changes mattered for legal reasons. Interesting, Patricia said, her voice shifting slightly. She looked at her screen, then at Trevor, then at me. It says here, the original author is Dean Callaway, she scrolled, and that every major revision for the past 6 months was also Dean Callaway. The room temperature dropped about 20 degrees. Trevor's smile held, but I saw the muscles tighten around his eyes. Well, yes, my father obviously contributed to the initial framework. This is a family business. We all collaborate. Collaborate. Patricia repeated the word like she was testing its weight. She looked directly at me for the first time since the meeting started. Mr. Callaway, is that accurate? You contributed to the initial framework? I could have helped him. I could have nodded and backed up his version of events. That's what fathers are supposed to do, right? Support their children. Smooth over the rough edges. Pretend that betrayal is just enthusiasm. Instead, I said, I wrote every word of that proposal, including the parts Trevor is about to present in Section 4 about vendor integration. The silence that followed was beautiful. Trevor's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, anger, calculation. He settled on wounded innocence. Dad, that's not... We worked on this together. You're making it sound like you erased my name and presented my work as your own? I kept my voice level, almost conversational, because that's exactly what happened. Patricia closed her laptop. The meeting was over, even if no one had said so yet. I think, she said carefully, that Cornerstone needs to schedule a follow-up conversation with Dean directly. Trevor started to protest, but Patricia was already standing. Her assistant scrambled to gather materials. They were out of the room in under 2 minutes, professional and polite and absolutely done with whatever family drama they'd just witnessed. The door clicked shut. On the video screen, Elise's expression had shifted from neutral to something sharper, almost satisfied. Trevor rounded on me. What the hell was that? That was me correcting a factual inaccuracy. You just torpedoed the biggest deal this company has had in 2 years. His voice climbed. Do you have any idea what you just did? I stood up slowly. My knee ached, 52 years of existence leaving its mark. But I made sure not to show it. I know exactly what I did. The question is, do you understand what you tried to do? I was presenting our company's work, our family's work. No. I picked up my tablet, disconnecting it from the presentation system. You were stealing credit for work you didn't do. There's a difference. Trevor's jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked like he might say something else. Something honest, maybe. Then he grabbed his phone off the table and headed for the door. This isn't over, he said. I know. He left. The door closed with a soft hydraulic hiss. I looked up at the screen where Elise still watched. She tilted her head slightly. A question. You were right, I told her. About all of it. I usually am. Her voice came through the speakers with perfect clarity. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? 24 hours ago, I would have said nothing. I would have convinced myself this was a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, one of those family business complications that gets smoothed over with time and patience. But something had shifted in that boardroom. Not just the humiliation of watching my son try to erase me. That was bad enough. No. What changed was the realization that if Trevor could do this once, he'd do it again. He'd already been doing it, probably. Those meetings I'd been mysteriously uninvited from. Those client calls that got rescheduled without my input. The subtle ways my access to systems had been restricted over the past few months. He wasn't making a mistake. He was executing a plan. And if my son wanted to play corporate warfare, he was about to learn something they don't teach in business school seminars. You don't go to war with the man who built the battlefield. Dean? Elise prompted. I looked at her through the screen, my wife of 27 years, the woman who'd stood beside me when this company was just an idea and a maxed-out credit card, who'd worked the books while I chased clients, who'd raised 2 kids while building the administrative backbone that let us scale. I'm going to remind our son, I said, that I didn't get where I am by being nice. Elise smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile she got when she was about to dismantle someone's argument piece by piece in a contract negotiation. Good, she said. About time. I disconnected the call and stood alone in the boardroom. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below, a grid of streets and buildings and small human struggles. Somewhere down there, Trevor was probably calling his wife, Riley, telling her his version of what just happened. Spinning it so he came out looking reasonable. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Vance. Would 4 p.m. tomorrow work for that conversation? Just you and me. I typed back, perfect. Then I pulled up my company admin access and started reviewing system permissions. Trevor had been busy. I'd give him that. He'd reassigned himself as primary contact on 3 major accounts, moved client files to folders I didn't have access to, even changed his title in the company directory from senior consultant to chief operating officer. That last one made me laugh. A cold, humorless sound that echoed in the empty boardroom. He'd crowned himself. Without asking, without earning it. Just assumed he could take what he wanted because I was his father and I'd let him. He forgot one thing, though. The same thing he'd forgotten about the metadata. I owned the company, not metaphorically, not technically, literally. Every share, every asset, every byte of data on our servers. I'd structured it that way deliberately, back when it was just me and Elise, and a dream of building something that would last. Trevor was an employee, a well-paid, highly positioned employee, but still just an employee. He was about to remember that. I gathered my things and headed for the elevator. The building was one of those modern tech sector monuments, open floor plans, exposed ductwork painted matte black, the kind of place where companies paid premium rent to look innovative. Our office took up half of the 8th floor. Through the glass walls, I could see our staff working at standing desks and modular workstations. Most of them liked Trevor. He was young, energetic, full of ideas about disruption and paradigm shifts, the kind of leader who brought in coffee trucks on Friday afternoons and talked about work-life balance. They liked me too, but differently. I was the founder, the old guard, the guy who remembered when we worked out of a strip mall office next to a dry cleaner. I represented stability and history, which in the business world is both reassuring and slightly boring. Trevor understood that. He'd been positioning himself as the future while making me look like the past, smart, cruel, and about to backfire in ways he couldn't imagine. The elevator arrived. I stepped inside, alone with my reflection in the polished steel doors. I looked tired, gray at the temples, lines around my eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Well, we were going to see about that. The elevator descended, 14 floors of separation from the scene of the crime. By the time I reached the parking garage, I'd made my decision. If Trevor wanted a war, I'd give him a war. Not loud, not obvious, not the kind of thing that would make us look like a dysfunctional family business on the edge of collapse. No, I'd dismantle him the way you take apart a complex system, carefully, methodically, removing one supporting piece at a time until the whole structure collapses under its own weight. He wanted to be the visionary leader? Fine. Let's see how he leads when he doesn't have my work to steal, when clients realize he can't deliver, when his carefully constructed image runs face first into reality. My car was where I'd left it that morning, a 5-year-old sedan that Trevor constantly gave me grief about. You should get something nicer, Dad. Image matters in this business. As if the car I drove had anything to do with the quality of my work. I got in, started the engine, and sat there for a moment in the dim, concrete silence of the parking garage. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Riley, my daughter-in-law. I stared at her name on the screen, debating whether to answer. Riley was Trevor's secret weapon, beautiful, connected, social media savvy. She'd grown her own consulting brand on Instagram and LinkedIn, posting carefully curated content about female entrepreneurship and work-life integration. 50,000 followers who hung on her every word about disrupting traditional business models. She'd been dropping hints for months that I was outdated in my approach, never directly to my face, but in comments and posts and podcast interviews. Little digs about how older generations needed to make space for new voices. I let the call go to voicemail. Whatever she wanted could wait. The message notification popped up. I played it. Hey, Dad. Riley's voice, bright and artificial. Trevor told me about the meeting. I think there might have been some miscommunication. Anyway, we should all sit down and talk this through like a family. How about dinner tomorrow? My treat. Let me know. Miscommunication. That was the spin then. Not theft, not betrayal, just a simple misunderstanding between loved ones. I deleted the message and pulled out of the parking space. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? 40 minutes later, I was home. We lived in one of the older suburbs, where the trees were tall and the houses had actual yards instead of the postage stamp lots Trevor and Riley had chosen in their trendy downtown neighborhood. The driveway needed resurfacing. The exterior paint was starting to peel near the roofline. Elise kept asking about renovations, but I'd been too busy keeping the company alive to think about cosmetic improvements. Besides, I liked this house. It was real, lived in. The kitchen had 27 years of family dinners embedded in its walls. The living room still had the mark on the ceiling from when Trevor, age 8, had thrown a baseball indoors despite explicit instructions not to. That kid was gone now. The one who'd apologized in tears, who'd helped me repaint the damaged area, who'd learned a lesson about consequences. I didn't know the man who'd taken his place. Elise met me in the kitchen. She'd beaten me home. Her office was closer, and she'd left the video call right after I'd disconnected. Coffee was already brewing. She'd changed out of her meeting clothes into jeans and one of my old company shirts, the one from our 10th anniversary that said, Callaway Consulting, building tomorrow's infrastructure. Tomorrow's infrastructure. The irony wasn't lost on me. So, she said, handing me a mug. How bad? I told her about Patricia's text, about Trevor's system permissions, about Riley's voicemail. Elise listened without interrupting, her face going through subtle shifts of expression that I'd learned to read over nearly 3 decades of marriage. When I finished, she set her coffee down and looked at me directly. He's been planning this for at least 6 months, she said. Maybe longer. How do you know? Because Riley's been laying the groundwork on social media. The new generation of Callaway Consulting. Fresh leadership for a changing world. She posted a photo last week of their office setup with the caption, Where the Future Happens. I don't follow her Instagram. I know. That's part of why they think they can get away with this. Elise pulled out her phone and showed me Riley's feed. Photo after photo of the two of them, at conferences with clients in our company office. Always positioned as young innovators, never once mentioning that the company existed before they'd finished college. There's more, Elise said. She scrolled to a post from 3 weeks ago. Riley at a networking event, surrounded by other young professionals. The caption read, Grateful to be leading the next chapter of family business. Time to retire the old playbook. Lead, not assist, not support, lead. She's positioning herself as the new face of the company, I said. They're positioning themselves. Both of them. Elise put her phone away. And they've been doing it carefully, nothing explicitly disrespectful, nothing you could point to and say, look, they're undermining me. Just constant, subtle erosion of your position. I thought about the meeting invitations I'd missed. The client dinners Trevor had attended without me. The way certain staff members had started directing questions to him instead of coming to me first. They made a mistake today, Elise said. They got impatient. Trevor should have waited longer before pulling something this blatant. Lucky for me. Lucky for us, she corrected. Because I've been keeping track. Of course she had. Elise didn't miss details. It was what made her terrifying in negotiations and invaluable in business. While I'd been burying myself in project work, she'd been watching the bigger picture. She pulled up a document on her phone. Client meetings you were mysteriously unavailable for, 17 in the last 4 months. Strategic planning sessions rescheduled without your input, 9. Budget discussions Trevor led without your approval, 6. You documented all of this? Someone had to. She looked at me with that expression that was half affection, half exasperation. You're brilliant with systems and projects, Dean, but you're terrible at office politics. You assumed your own son wouldn't actively work against you. Stupid of me. Human of you. She softened slightly. But we're past that now. The question is, what you're going to do about it. I walked to the window. Our backyard stretched out, slightly overgrown. I'd been meaning to deal with the landscaping for months. Another thing I'd let slip while focusing on work that Trevor was now claiming as his own. I'm going to take back my company, I said, piece by piece, until there's nothing left for them to steal. Good. Elise came to stand beside me. But you need to be smart about this. Trevor will expect you to confront him directly, to make a scene. That plays into his narrative. Old guard versus new vision, father who can't let go. So what do I do? She smiled, that dangerous smile again. You let him think he's winning, right up until the moment he loses everything. We spent the next 3 hours at the kitchen table, mapping out exactly what Trevor had access to and what he didn't. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd thought. He'd been systematically repositioning himself as the operational heart of the company. Not all at once, that would have been too obvious. But gradually, cleverly, creating a situation where it would look natural for him to take over. He's building a narrative, Elise explained. Dean Callaway, brilliant founder who's ready to step back and enjoy retirement. Trevor Callaway, the natural successor who's been running things behind the scenes anyway. Except I have no intention of retiring. And now everyone knows it. She tapped the table. That's what changed today. You went on record saying you created that proposal. Patricia Vance is a sharp investor. She caught the implication immediately. Trevor tried to steal credit and you called him on it. So he'll be more careful now. Maybe. Or maybe he'll escalate. Elise pulled up another note on her phone. I overheard something yesterday. Riley was on a call with her sister. She said, and I quote, Dean is retiring soon, whether he admits it or not. We're just accelerating the timeline. The words landed like a punch to the gut. My own daughter-in-law, planning my exit from the company I'd built. How did you overhear that? She was in the parking garage, didn't realize I was 2 cars over. Elise's expression was cold. She also said something about how they'd already talked to some of the staff about transitioning leadership structures. So it wasn't just Trevor and Riley. They'd been building a coalition, lining up support, making it look like I was the problem. The stubborn founder who wouldn't recognize it was time to pass the torch. Except the torch was mine to pass. And I hadn't decided to pass it to anyone. We need to know who they've brought on board, I said. I'm working on it. Give me a few days. Elise stood up. But Dean? You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that some people you trust might be on their side. Why would they be? Because Trevor is charismatic, and you're demanding. Because Riley makes everyone feel important, and you just expect quality work. Because people like the idea of new leadership, even when the old leadership is perfectly functional. It made sense. Depressing, cynical sense. But sense nonetheless. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Callaway? A man's voice, professional. This is James Park from Redstone Systems. I wanted to reach out directly about the proposal Trevor presented last week. Redstone, one of our 3 biggest clients, a manufacturing firm looking to overhaul their logistics network. What about it? I asked. Well, frankly, we've been trying to get clarification on some of the technical specifications. Trevor keeps saying he'll get back to us, but it's been 5 days. I pulled the original documents and saw your name as the primary contact. Thought I'd go straight to the source. I looked at Elise. She'd heard enough to understand what was happening. I'll have those clarifications to you by end of day tomorrow, I told James. Appreciate it. And Mr. Callaway, between you and me, we prefer working with you directly anyway. Trevor's great with presentations, but when we have actual technical questions, he trailed off diplomatically. I understand. I'll make sure you have everything you need. We ended the call. I set the phone down on the table. That's the second crack, Elise said quietly. Second? Patricia Vance was the first. She knows Trevor tried to steal your work. Now James Park is telling you Trevor can't actually deliver on the technical side. She leaned forward. Trevor's been selling himself as a visionary who can handle both strategy and execution. But he can't. He's all presentation and no substance. So we expose that. Carefully, surgically. Elise started making notes. You respond to client inquiries fast and professionally. You make yourself indispensable again. Meanwhile, Trevor will keep making promises he can't keep. And eventually, clients will notice. They're already noticing. That's why James called you. It was brilliant. Simple, but brilliant. I wouldn't have to sabotage Trevor directly. I'd just let him sabotage himself by trying to do work he wasn't qualified for. All I had to do was be better at my job than my son was at pretending to do my job. We worked until almost midnight, building out the strategy. Every client Trevor had claimed as his, we'd reclaim by simply being more responsive and more competent. Every project he'd taken credit for, we'd quietly remind stakeholders about the actual source. Not in a vindictive way, just factually, professionally. By the time we went to bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not quite optimism, the situation was too screwed up for that. But purpose, direction. The cold clarity that comes from knowing exactly what you need to do and how you're going to do it. Trevor wanted to erase me from my own company? Fine. Let's see how he liked being erased from his imagined future. I lay in the dark next to Elise, listening to the familiar sounds of our house settling. Somewhere across town, Trevor and Riley were probably celebrating, convinced they'd won. Convinced I was too old or too tired or too conflict-averse to fight back. They were wrong about all three. I'd spent 25 years building this company by outworking, outthinking, and outlasting everyone who said it couldn't be done. My own son thought he could take me down with some stolen slides and social media positioning. He was about to learn why the old guard got old. We survived. The all-hands meeting Trevor had scheduled for Monday became my all-hands meeting by default. He'd announced it, built anticipation, and then quit 3 days before it happened. Now I had to figure out what to say to a staff that was probably equal parts confused and concerned. I spent Sunday preparing. Not a presentation. Trevor did presentations. I'd just talk to them like adults, answer questions, lay out the reality of where we were and where we were going. Elise sat in on my practice run at the kitchen table. "You sound defensive," she said after I'd gone through it once. "I am defensive. Can't sound that way. Right now, the narrative is that Trevor left to pursue new opportunities, and you're the established leader who'll keep the ship steady. If you come across as angry or threatened, it supports his story that you're the obstacle. So what do I say? The truth, but confident truth." She pulled up notes. "Trevor made a decision that's best for him. You respect that. The company remains strong. Client relationships are solid. Projects are on track. Anyone with concerns can talk to you directly. That's it? That's it. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Trevor wants drama. You want stability." She was right. As usual. Monday morning, I got to the office at 7. Gave myself time to settle in before staff arrived. The space felt different, knowing Trevor's office across the floor would stay empty. I'd already had maintenance remove his name from the door plate. Not out of spite, just practicality. The office would be reassigned eventually. No sense leaving a memorial to someone who quit. People started arriving around 8. The energy was subdued, lots of sidelong glances. Quiet conversations that stopped when I walked by. I'd scheduled the meeting for 9 a.m. in the main conference room, big enough for all 32 employees, windows overlooking downtown, the same space where we did quarterly reviews and major client presentations. By 9, everyone was seated. I stood at the front without slides or notes, just me and the question of what came next. "Thanks for being here," I started. "I know the past few days have been confusing. I want to address what happened and what it means going forward. Everyone watching." Trevor announced his decision to leave and pursue other opportunities. I respect that decision. People have the right to choose their career paths, including my son. I paused. Let that sit for a moment. What hasn't changed is our commitment to our clients and the quality of work we deliver. Every current project remains on track. Every client relationship remains strong. This company didn't start when Trevor joined, and it doesn't end because he left. I saw a few nods, some relief in faces. They'd been worried this meant instability. I know some of you are probably wondering if others will leave. If Trevor's starting something new and recruiting. The answer is yes, he is. And if anyone here wants to explore that opportunity, I won't stand in your way. But I will say this. I looked around the room, made eye contact with people I'd worked with for years. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've built this company through recessions and industry changes and competitors who thought they could do it better. We're still here because we focus on one thing: delivering real value to clients. Not vision statements, not next-generation consulting models, results. What about succession planning? This from Mark, one of the project managers. If Trevor was being groomed to take over and now he's gone, Trevor wasn't being groomed to take over. He was being given opportunities to develop his skills and prove his capabilities. He chose a different path. I kept my voice even. As for succession, that's something I'll address when the time comes, which isn't now. A few more questions, mostly practical stuff about project reassignments and client communications. I answered each one directly, specifically, without corporate speak or vagueness. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. By the end, the tension had noticeably decreased. People didn't look worried anymore. They looked like they were ready to get back to work. After everyone filed out, Monica stayed behind. "That went well," she said. "You think?" "I think you made it clear that this isn't a crisis. That was what people needed to hear." She hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think Trevor can actually pull off starting his own firm?" I considered the question carefully. Monica wasn't asking out of idle curiosity. She was asking because she needed to know if we should be worried about real competition. Honestly, no. Trevor's good at selling ideas. But building a consulting firm requires 3 things: technical expertise, operational infrastructure, and client trust. He has none of those independently. But he has Kevin and Sarah. Kevin's an analyst who needs supervision. Sarah does marketing. Neither of them can deliver client projects. I looked out the window at the city below. Trevor will figure that out eventually. The question is how much damage he does to himself before he realizes it. Monica nodded slowly. "That's sad." "It is." "Are you going to help him when it falls apart?" The question caught me off guard, not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I didn't have a good answer. "I don't know," I said finally. "Part of me wants to. He's my son. But part of me thinks maybe he needs to learn this lesson the hard way. Tough love. Something like that." Monica left me alone in the conference room. I stayed there for a few minutes, looking at the empty chairs, thinking about what I'd just told 32 people. That we were stable, that we'd be fine, that Trevor leaving didn't change anything fundamental about who we were. I believed it, mostly. But there was a nagging thought I couldn't shake. What if I was wrong? What if Trevor actually managed to pull this off? Build a successful firm based on his next-generation model? Prove that he didn't need my foundation after all? My phone buzzed. Text from Patricia Vance. "Heard about Trevor. You okay?" I typed back, "Fine. Actually simplifies things." Her response came immediately. "Good. Means we can move forward without interference. Wire transfer should hit your account today." The investment. $2 million for the logistics optimization model. The project that had started this whole mess was now fully funded and entirely under my control. I checked my email. Sure enough, a notification from the bank. Funds received. I'd won the first major battle. Trevor was gone. The investment was secured. The staff was stable. By every objective measure, I should feel satisfied. Instead, I felt tired. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and emails. Clients reaching out to confirm project status after hearing about Trevor's departure. Staff checking in about reassigned responsibilities. Vendors wanting to make sure nothing would impact their contracts. Every interaction, I projected confidence and stability. Internally, I was calculating what Trevor would do next. Around 4 p.m., I got my answer. An email from James Park at Redstone forwarded to me by his assistant. The original message was from Trevor, sent to James personally. James, as you may have heard, I've left Callaway Consulting to start my own firm focused on next-generation logistics solutions. I wanted to reach out directly because I believe the work we were developing together represents the future of the industry. If you're interested in exploring how we might continue that relationship in this new structure, I'd love to schedule a call. Trevor. I read it twice. It was carefully worded to avoid direct poaching. Technically, he wasn't saying, follow me or leave Callaway, just offering to continue work they'd been doing, but the implication was clear. I called James. Dean, he answered. I was about to call you. I saw Trevor's email. Yeah, look, I want to be straight with you. Trevor reached out and I felt obligated to forward it to your team, but I'm not interested in switching firms. Why not? A pause. Because Trevor doesn't actually understand our infrastructure needs. You do. He pitched me vision and innovation. You delivered specifications and implementation plans. I know which one I trust. Relief washed through me. I appreciate that. Plus, honestly, starting a consulting firm with one analyst and a marketing person? That's not a company, that's a LinkedIn profile. I laughed despite myself. Fair assessment. I did want to let you know he's probably reaching out to other clients. Might want to get ahead of that. Already on it. Thanks for the heads up. After we hung up, I pulled up the full client list. 23 active accounts. I started drafting personal emails to each one. Not defensive, not trash-talking Trevor. Just reaffirming our relationship and making sure they had direct access to me for any questions. Elise came by the office around 6. I was still working through client communications. How bad? She asked, seeing the look on my face. Trevor's reaching out to clients directly, trying to poach them. All of them? Probably. So far, I've only seen the one to James Park, but I'm assuming it's a mass campaign. She sat down, pulling out her phone. Have you checked Riley's Instagram? No. Should I? Probably. She pulled it up. The latest post was from 2 hours ago. A photo of Trevor in what looked like a new office space. Empty but promising. The caption, Day 1 of building something incredible. Sometimes you have to leave the comfort of the familiar to create the extraordinary. Grateful for everyone who believes in this vision. Daka new beginnings. Entrepreneurship. Dafin building something amazing. Dafin next chapter. The comments were full of support. People congratulating him, asking how they could be part of it, offering encouragement. She's building his brand, I said, aggressively. This is the 3rd post today about his new venture. Elise scrolled. She's positioning this as a brave choice. David versus Goliath. Innovative upstart challenging the established order. Even though he has no clients, no capabilities, and no infrastructure. Doesn't matter. The narrative doesn't have to be true. It just has to be compelling. She put her phone away. You need to decide how you're going to respond. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to let his lack of results speak for itself. That's one approach. The risk is that by the time results matter, he'll have damaged your client relationships enough that you've lost ground. She was right. I couldn't just ignore this and hope it went away. Trevor was actively trying to pull clients. Riley was building a narrative that made him look like the hero. If I didn't counter that somehow, some people would believe it. What do you suggest? Not fighting fire with fire. That just makes you look petty. Instead, you quietly remind everyone why they trust you. Deliver exceptional work. Be more responsive than Trevor ever was. Make the contrast obvious without saying a word. Exactly. She smiled slightly. Trevor can post about building something incredible. You can actually build something incredible. See which one clients care about more. We worked together for another 2 hours. Elise helped me prioritize which clients needed immediate attention and which were solid enough to handle a standard check-in. We divided them into categories: at risk, neutral, and definitely staying. At risk, 3 clients where Trevor had been the primary contact, and they might not know me well. Neutral. 8 clients where relationships were split between us. Definitely staying. 12 clients where I'd done the technical work and they'd expressed preference for me directly. The at-risk ones are your priority, Elise said. Schedule face-to-face meetings. Bring project documentation. Show them the depth of work Trevor couldn't show them. And the neutral ones? Speed. Be more responsive than Trevor can possibly be with his limited resources. Make them remember why they hired a real firm instead of a startup. By the time we left the office, it was past 9. The building was empty except for security. Our footsteps echoed in the lobby. Do you think he can actually succeed? I asked in the car. Trevor? No. But he can cause damage while failing. That's what we're trying to minimize. We drove in silence for a while. I thought about Trevor in his empty office space, Riley taking pictures for Instagram, the two of them convinced they were on the edge of something great. Maybe they were. Maybe I was wrong about his capabilities. Maybe sheer confidence and social media presence could substitute for actual expertise in the modern consulting world. But I didn't think so. The next morning, I started the client meetings. First up was Redstone, James Park and his operations team. I brought the full technical documentation for their project. Not slides, not high-level overviews, the actual specifications, implementation plans, and contingency protocols. This is the work Trevor was referencing in his email, I said, laying it all out. These are the models we've developed specifically for your infrastructure needs. Every calculation, every timeline, every cost projection. James and his team went through it carefully, asked detailed questions. I answered each one specifically, technically, without any corporate hedging. After an hour, James sat back. This is exactly what we need. Trevor never showed us anything this detailed. He probably didn't have access to it. Most of this is documentation I maintain directly. So, if we'd gone with him, you'd have been starting from scratch, with a much smaller team, and no proven track record of implementation. James nodded slowly. Good to know. And just to be clear, our contract is with Callaway Consulting, not Trevor personally? Correct. All client relationships remain with the firm. Then we're good. Let's keep moving forward as planned. 1 down, 2 more at-risk clients to go. The second meeting that afternoon didn't go as well. A logistics startup called Vector Point that Trevor had brought in 6 months ago. The founder, a guy named Danny Liu, was late 30s, tech sector background, very impressed by Trevor's innovation talk. Dean, I appreciate you coming in, Danny said. But I have to be honest, Trevor was the reason we chose Callaway. His vision for next-generation logistics matched what we're trying to build. What specifically about his vision appealed to you? The focus on disruption, on challenging traditional infrastructure models, on being nimble and adaptive rather than locked into old frameworks. I listened to him repeat Trevor's buzzwords and realized this was a lost cause. Danny didn't want technical expertise. He wanted someone who talked like a TED Talk. I understand, I said. And if Trevor's approach is what you're looking for, you should work with him. Danny looked surprised. You're okay with that? I'm not going to tell you who to hire, but I will say this. At some point, you're going to need actual implementation plans, not concepts, not vision, specific technical solutions to specific logistical problems. When you need that, Trevor's going to struggle. Maybe, but maybe that's thinking from the old model. Maybe. I stood up. Good luck with your company. I left before he could respond. It stung, losing a client. But Danny was right. He'd chosen Callaway because of Trevor. Without Trevor, there was no fit. 1 more at-risk meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Then I could focus on reinforcing the neutral clients. That evening, Elise asked how it went. 1-1, lost 1, I said. The startup? Yeah. Trevor's approach is what they wanted. They can have it. Good riddance. A client who values buzzwords over results was always going to be problematic. Still feels like losing. It's not losing, it's filtering. Let Trevor collect all the clients who want vision without substance. You keep the ones who want actual results. She was right. But it didn't change the fact that Trevor had successfully pulled a client on his second day of operations. If he could do that a few more times, he might actually build something viable. Or at least something that looked viable long enough to cause serious problems. Over the next week, the pattern became clear. Trevor was aggressively pursuing clients, using Riley's social media presence to build credibility, and positioning himself as the innovative alternative to traditional consulting. He got 3 more meetings that I knew about. One client, another startup that valued presentation over substance. Lost 2 when they asked for detailed proposals he couldn't deliver. Meanwhile, I locked down every neutral client by being faster, more thorough, and more technically competent than Trevor could possibly be with his limited resources. The staff stabilized. After Kevin and Sarah left, no one else followed. The work continued. Projects delivered, clients satisfied. On the surface, everything looked fine. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Trevor was building toward something, some move he thought would change the game. The answer came 2 weeks after he'd left. A LinkedIn post from Riley that showed up in my feed because half my staff followed her. A photo of Trevor shaking hands with someone I didn't recognize. The caption, "Thrilled to announce our newest partner and investor, Marcus Kelleher, former VP of Strategic Innovation at Deloitte Consulting. Together, we're building the future of infrastructure consulting. Exciting announcements coming soon. Partnership, growth, next generation, Marcus Kelleher." I pulled up his background. 15 years at Deloitte, strong network, solid reputation. Recently left to focus on advising startups, and now he was partnering with Trevor. This changed everything. Trevor no longer looked like a kid playing startup. He looked like someone with serious backing and industry credibility, and Marcus brought exactly what Trevor lacked: operational experience and professional networks. "We have a problem," I told Elise that night. She read the post. Her face tightened. "Yes, we do."